Long before empires rose and fell, long before kings etched their names into history, there existed a hidden realm of power. A sacred force, whispered in shadows, guarded by ancestors who understood the delicate balance between life, death, and destiny. This was the world of pre-African spirituality, a universe alive with rituals, symbols, and knowledge older than any written record. What outsiders called black magic was merely the shadow of something far greater, something revered and sacred. In these ancient societies, power was not measured in gold or weapons. It was measured in understanding, the ability to commune with spirits, to heal, to protect, and to shape the very threads of existence. Every gesture, every symbol, carved into stone or inked onto skin, carried meaning. Every chant or offering was a dialogue with forces that connected the living and the dead. To misinterpret it as darkness was not ignorance, it was fear. The knowledge of these sacred traditions was never meant for all eyes. Initiates were carefully chosen, taught the delicate language of the cosmos, and bound to secrets that could influence kingdoms. The rituals were not tricks, nor were they entertainment. They were a bridge between the seen and the unseen. For centuries, this wisdom shaped societies, guided decisions, and maintained balance within communities. Yet history has rarely acknowledged it. Colonialism, conquest, and misunderstanding buried these truths beneath layers of prejudice. Practices that empowered were labeled sinister. Symbols meant to protect were called curses. The force of this sacred knowledge, which once shaped rulers and warriors alike, was reduced in the eyes of outsiders to fearsome superstition. But the veil cannot hold forever. Hidden in oral traditions, preserved in sacred texts, whispered in ceremonies, fragments of this ancient power survive, waiting to be rediscovered. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. We travel to a time when the cosmos was a living guide, when rituals were a roadmap, and when every element of the natural world spoke its sacred truth. We will explore the origins of these practices, uncover the misunderstood rituals, and reveal the wisdom that has persisted despite centuries of erasure. The force called black magic was never dark. It was knowledge, reverence, and power intertwined. By the end of this journey, you will not only understand what these practices truly were, but you will see why they were feared, misunderstood, and erased. You will witness the sacred origins of pre-African spirituality and the profound wisdom embedded in rituals that shaped civilizations. Prepare to step into a world of hidden truths, to see the light within the shadow, and to understand that the sacred has always been closer than we think. Long before written records, Africa was a cradle of civilization and the birthplace of spiritual practices that intertwined daily life, nature, and the cosmos. These ancient societies did not separate the sacred from the ordinary. Every action, from planting crops to constructing dwellings, was guided by spiritual understanding. Life was seen as a continuum where ancestors watched over the living. The natural world was alive with spirits, and every gesture had a meaning beyond the visible. Archaeological evidence suggests that some of the earliest human spiritual expressions emerged in Africa tens of thousands of years ago. Rock paintings, carved figurines, and ritual artifacts reveal that humans were creating symbolic systems to understand their place in the universe. In sites such as the Tassili Niger in Algeria, depictions of ritual dances, ceremonial masks, and animal worship indicate a complex spiritual consciousness far older than most civilizations credited in textbooks. The spiritual systems of these pre-African societies were grounded in a profound respect for nature. Rivers, mountains, forests, and celestial bodies were not merely resources, they were living entities with power and intention. Shamans, priests, and spiritual leaders acted as mediators, interpreting the language of the natural and supernatural worlds to guide their communities. This connection to nature shaped everything, from laws and ethics to medicine and art, forming a worldview where balance and harmony were paramount. Ancestors were central to this spiritual framework. Death was not an end but a transition to another form of existence, where spirits continued to influence the living. Families and communities maintained ongoing relationships with their forebears through rituals, offerings, and storytelling. This reverence for lineage and continuity created social cohesion and instilled a moral framework that guided behavior, justice, and leadership. Ancestors were protectors, teachers, and arbiters of fate, their wisdom woven into the fabric of daily life. Spiritual practices also involved elaborate rituals designed to harness energy and knowledge from the universe. Divination systems, initiation rites, and ceremonial dances were not mere spectacle. They were methods of communicating with forces that governed health, prosperity, and destiny. Every symbol and gesture was codified with intention. For example, scarification and body markings often represented spiritual alignment, social status, or protection, creating a living map of power and knowledge etched into the human body itself. These practices were often communal, reinforcing bonds and shared identity. Festivals, seasonal ceremonies, and collective rituals served as both spiritual guidance and social cohesion, ensuring the continuity of traditions and the survival of knowledge across generations. Unlike many modern spiritual systems, pre-African spirituality did not rely on a single deity or rigid hierarchy. It was a dynamic, adaptable, and deeply personal system of understanding where multiple forces, human, natural, and cosmic, interacted continuously. It is important to note that these practices were not static. Over centuries, spiritual systems evolved, absorbing new ideas, responding to environmental changes, and adapting to social shifts. Yet despite this evolution, the core principles remained: reverence for ancestors, harmony with nature, and the pursuit of knowledge that connected the human and the divine. This continuity explains why even after centuries of disruption, echoes of these sacred practices still survive across Africa and the diaspora. Some of the most fascinating aspects of these traditions are the sacred sites that continue to inspire awe. Temples, altars, stone circles, and natural formations were not built merely for function. They were designed to channel energy, honor spirits, and serve as gateways between worlds. Places like Great Zimbabwe, the Dogon Cliffs in Mali, and ancient Yoruba shrines were hubs of knowledge, where spiritual practice and governance intertwined seamlessly. Each site tells a story of human ingenuity, cosmic awareness, and the desire to align with the sacred forces of the universe. These origins also laid the groundwork for what would later be misunderstood as black magic. The spiritual techniques, rituals, and symbols were practical methods to influence outcomes, heal communities, and understand the unseen. Outsiders, unfamiliar with the symbolic language and ethical frameworks, often misinterpreted these practices as dark or dangerous. The truth, however, is that these were systems of profound wisdom, carefully designed to maintain balance and guide human behavior in accordance with the natural and spiritual order. The power of pre-African spirituality was not only in its rituals, but also in its philosophy. It taught that every action has a consequence, that energy can be harnessed for healing or harm, and that knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Communities were deeply aware that spiritual power carried responsibility. This balance of knowledge, ethics, and action is what made these practices sacred and respected within their societies, though often feared by those who only glimpsed their outer manifestations. By exploring these origins, we begin to understand the foundation upon which later mystical practices were built. Pre-African spirituality was not mere superstition. It was a sophisticated system of knowledge, ethics, and cosmic understanding. It shaped governance, medicine, art, and social cohesion. It empowered individuals while serving the collective. And despite centuries of misrepresentation, its core truths remain intact, waiting to be unveiled and understood on their own terms. When European explorers and colonizers first encountered African spiritual practices, they saw rituals and symbols they could not comprehend. Ceremonial dances, protective charms, and rituals invoking spirits were immediately framed as dark or dangerous. What was deeply misunderstood was the moral and philosophical framework guiding these practices. These were not acts of malevolence. They were methods of maintaining balance, healing communities, and aligning human life with the forces of nature and the cosmos. Many of the practices labeled as black magic had practical and sacred purposes. Consider the use of protective charms or talismans. These objects were not meant to curse, but to shield individuals from harm, misfortune, and spiritual imbalance. Each object was carefully prepared, infused with intention, and activated through ritual. Far from being superstition, these practices were an early form of psychosomatic medicine, spiritual guidance, and community protection, intertwined with symbolic language, ancestral wisdom. divination practices also sparked fear and misunderstanding. The reading of bones, shells, or symbols was not fortune-telling for personal gain alone. It was a structured method of decision-making that connected human actions to the unseen forces of the universe. Spiritual leaders interpreted signs to guide communities in agriculture, justice, and health. To outsiders, the cryptic language of divination seemed sinister. Yet, for those initiated, it was a sacred dialogue, a way to harmonize human choices with cosmic patterns. Initiation rites were another aspect often misinterpreted. Across pre-African societies, young members underwent transformative rituals that introduced them to spiritual knowledge and social responsibility. These rites included dances, symbolic scarification, storytelling, and ceremonies designed to awaken latent spiritual perception. The secrecy of these rituals, necessary for their spiritual efficacy, fed fear and speculation among outsiders. What they did not see was the ethical framework these practices instilled: respect for ancestors, responsibility toward the community, and reverence for life itself. Healing rituals were also a point of contention. Spiritual healers combined herbal medicine, ritual, and ancestral guidance to address physical and psychological ailments. To the uninformed observer, these ceremonies appeared mystical or even threatening. In truth, they were early forms of holistic healthcare, addressing not just symptoms but root causes through a blend of natural remedies and spiritual alignment. Healing, in these traditions, was inseparable from ethics, community responsibility, and cosmic awareness. Symbols, too, were often misread. Intricate carvings, masks, and geometric patterns encoded information, morality, and protection. A mask used in a ceremonial dance could simultaneously represent an ancestor, a moral lesson, and a cosmic principle. Outsiders who lacked the context saw only the surface, strange patterns and unfamiliar rituals, and labeled them evil. Within the culture, however, these symbols acted as a living language, preserving knowledge, history, and spiritual guidance across generations. Even practices that involved manipulation of energy or natural forces were guided by strict ethical codes. Spiritual leaders understood that power, when used irresponsibly, could bring harm not just to the practitioner, but to the entire community. This is the reason why initiation, mentorship, and adherence to ritual were essential. What outsiders labeled as black magic was, in fact, a sophisticated understanding of energy, causality, and responsibility, a system of knowledge that demanded integrity, discipline, and respect. The mislabeling of these practices as sinister was also fueled by fear of cultural autonomy. Spiritual systems that empowered communities and connected people to ancestral wisdom were threatening to external powers. Labeling rituals as black magic allowed outsiders to delegitimize, suppress, and control indigenous knowledge. Over time, this misrepresentation became entrenched, casting a shadow over practices that were, at their core, profoundly sacred and morally guided. Even within Africa, regional differences in practice added layers of misunderstanding. A ritual in one society could have a different purpose or method in another, but outsiders often treated all practices as a monolithic threat. This lack of nuance amplified fear and misinterpretation. What united these practices, however, was not malevolence but reverence. Reverence for ancestors, reverence for the natural world, and reverence for the balance that governs life. By exploring these misunderstood practices, we begin to see black magic not as a force of evil, but as a shadowed mirror of sacred knowledge. Rituals, symbols, and ceremonies were ethical, practical, and profoundly spiritual. They were not meant to harm, but to guide, protect, and preserve. They reveal a worldview where human action, cosmic forces, and ancestral wisdom are inseparable. A worldview that outsiders misunderstood because they feared what they could not control or decode. In understanding these practices, we reclaim the narrative. We see that black magic, as labeled by outsiders, was a distortion of sacred traditions designed to maintain harmony. The power of pre-African spirituality was holistic, moral, and deeply integrated into community life. It reminds us that what is feared often contains the deepest wisdom, and what is misrepresented often holds the keys to understanding our shared human heritage. As we move forward, we will uncover specific rituals, symbols, and practices that have survived centuries of misrepresentation. We will explore the true nature of these sacred acts, the knowledge encoded in each gesture, and the profound understanding of the universe that guided ancient practitioners. This journey will reveal that what many dismissed as dark or dangerous was, in truth, a luminous thread of knowledge connecting humanity to the cosmos. At the heart of pre-African spirituality lies a universe of symbols, rituals, and practices that connected the living with the unseen. Each ceremony was deliberate, every gesture encoded with knowledge passed down through generations. These were not empty customs, they were tools for understanding the cosmos, guiding communities, and maintaining harmony. The sacred was tangible, accessible to those initiated, and deeply intertwined with daily life. Masks were among the most powerful instruments in spiritual practice. Far from being mere art, they were conduits between worlds. Worn during ceremonies, they represented ancestral spirits, natural forces, and cosmic principles. A single mask could embody a river spirit, a guardian of morality, or a celestial guide. Through dance and ritual, the wearer became a vessel, channeling the energy and wisdom of generations past. The community, in turn, participated, learning morality, respect, and the power of alignment with the sacred. Symbols carved in stone, etched in wood, or painted on the body were equally significant. Every line, circle, or geometric shape was a language of its own, conveying protection, guidance, or historical memory. Scarification, for example, was a sacred practice that marked the body as a map of personal and spiritual growth. It represented initiation, readiness for responsibility, and alignment with ancestral wisdom. These symbols were living, breathing knowledge, impossible to separate from the ethics and philosophy that underpinned them. Rituals themselves varied in complexity, ranging from daily offerings to elaborate seasonal ceremonies. Daily acts, such as pouring libations or offering food to ancestors, reinforced a continuous connection to the spiritual realm. Seasonal ceremonies, on the other hand, aligned communities with natural cycles, like harvests or the moon's phases. They involved music, dance, chanting, and complex choreography designed to invoke harmony between human life and cosmic rhythm. The goal was always balance, restoring energy, guidance, and protection. Divination played a central role in guiding decisions and understanding the unseen. Methods varied widely. Some used bones, shells, or seeds. Others interpreted natural phenomena or dreams. A diviner would read patterns, sounds, or movements, interpreting messages from ancestors or spiritual forces. Far from superstition, these practices were systems of knowledge designed to connect cause and effect, human intention, and cosmic influence. The insights offered by diviners were respected, ethical, and deeply tied to community well-being. Initiation rituals were transformative experiences that went beyond social passage. They were spiritual awakenings, designed to instill responsibility, wisdom, and alignment with cosmic principles. Youths were taught the language of symbols, the ethical use of power, and the sacred connections that governed existence. They learned that energy and knowledge were gifts, not tools for personal domination. By completing these rites, initiates became guardians of spiritual knowledge, entrusted with the care of the living and the memory of the ancestors. Healing rituals combined herbal medicine, song, and energy work to restore harmony within the body, mind, and spirit. Practitioners understood that imbalance manifested not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Remedies were tailored to the individual, integrating natural elements with ritual action. Healing was never just a personal act, it was communal, ethical, and deeply spiritual. The practitioner, guided by ancestral wisdom, ensured that every intervention maintained the balance of life itself. Even objects like amulets, staffs, and ceremonial tools were imbued with purpose. A carved staff could symbolize leadership, ancestral authority, or spiritual power. Amulets contained protective energy, aligning the wearer with cosmic harmony. The creation of these objects required precision, ritual, and sacred intention. They were not toys nor tools of harm, they were embodiments of knowledge, ethics, and cosmic connection. Music, chanting, and dance were not merely expressions of celebration. They were the language of the spirit. Drums, flutes, and vocal chants were carefully structured to influence energy, communicate with ancestors, and align the human body with natural rhythms. Dance was a conduit for spiritual embodiment, a physical expression of invisible forces. Participation in these practices was not entertainment. It was an immersive act of sacred alignment, allowing the community to witness and interact with the unseen. Even within these sacred practices, ethical codes guided the use of knowledge and power. Spiritual leaders and practitioners understood that misusing energy could harm the community, disrupt balance, or anger the ancestors. This was why rituals were performed with intention, under guidance, and often in secrecy. Power without wisdom was dangerous, and wisdom without action was meaningless. This balance of knowledge, responsibility, and reverence is the foundation of pre-African spirituality. By examining rituals, symbols, and sacred practices, it becomes clear that what many outsiders feared as black magic was actually a sophisticated system of ethics, knowledge, and cosmic alignment. These practices were designed to heal, protect, guide, and connect communities to ancestral and natural forces. They were tools of empowerment, understanding, and sacred responsibility. Misunderstanding them led to fear, but uncovering them reveals a world of profound wisdom and timeless relevance. The arrival of European colonizers marked a turning point in the perception and practice of African spirituality. What was once revered, encoded in rituals, and seamlessly woven into daily life became targets of fear, misunderstanding, and systematic suppression. Colonial authorities, missionaries, and traders often labeled spiritual leaders as sorcerers, healers as witches, and sacred ceremonies as pagan or evil. Their goal was not merely conversion, but the complete disruption of indigenous knowledge systems. Colonial powers understood that spiritual authority was deeply intertwined with social control. Communities guided by ancestral wisdom and spiritual ethics could not be easily subjugated. By erasing rituals, outlawing practices, and rewriting history, colonizers attempted to sever the links between people and their sacred traditions. Written records were biased, oral traditions were discredited, and symbols were demonized. Yet, despite this deliberate erasure, fragments of knowledge persisted, hidden in plain sight or preserved in secret within resilient communities. Missionaries played a particularly active role in reshaping African spirituality. They introduced alternative belief systems, condemned local practices as sinful, and actively encouraged the abandonment of rituals. Sacred objects were confiscated or destroyed, and those who resisted faced ostracism or violence. In response, many spiritual practitioners adapted, blending elements of their traditions with new religious frameworks or transferring sacred knowledge orally and symbolically to protect it from erasure. Despite suppression, the resilience of African spirituality is remarkable. Many rituals and symbols survived by moving underground, becoming part of secret societies, or being encoded in daily practices that appeared mundane to outsiders. Healing practices, divination, and ritual dances often continued under the radar, safeguarded by trusted practitioners. This survival was not accidental. It was a deliberate act of resistance, ensuring that sacred knowledge endured even in the face of oppression. Oral traditions played a crucial role in preserving sacred knowledge. Stories, proverbs, songs, and chants transmitted wisdom across generations, often concealing deeper spiritual meanings beneath seemingly simple narratives. A tale about a cunning animal or a hero's journey could simultaneously encode lessons about energy, ethics, and community responsibility. These narratives allowed spiritual knowledge to persist, even when public practice was forbidden. Symbols, too, became tools of covert preservation. Carvings, masks, and ceremonial objects were hidden or repurposed, maintaining their sacred function without drawing the attention of outsiders. Scarification patterns continued as personal and communal markers of identity, spirituality, and ethical development. Even when rituals could not be performed openly, the language of symbols kept the essence of pre-African spirituality alive. Resistance also took subtle, everyday forms. Communities maintained sacred spaces, observed traditional calendars, and performed rituals within private settings. Knowledge was passed to trusted youth during initiation ceremonies or through coded oral teachings. This careful curation of spiritual wisdom ensured that even under systemic oppression, the heartbeat of pre-African spirituality continued to pulse, ready to re-emerge when circumstances allowed. Diaspora communities played another crucial role in preserving these traditions. Enslaved Africans carried fragments of their spiritual heritage across continents, adapting rituals, symbols, and songs to new environments. These practices evolved into new forms such as voodoo, santeria, and candomblé, yet remained deeply rooted in ancestral African wisdom. Across generations, these diaspora practices have preserved connections to African spirituality, demonstrating its adaptability and resilience. Colonial suppression also inadvertently documented the very practices they sought to erase. Anthropologists, travelers, and early historians often recorded rituals, ceremonies, and symbolic practices, even if their accounts were biased or incomplete. Today, these records, combined with oral histories, archaeological evidence, and community knowledge, allow scholars and practitioners to reconstruct a more accurate understanding of pre-African spirituality. Ultimately, the survival of these sacred practices is a testament to human resilience, ethical responsibility, and the enduring power of knowledge. Despite centuries of misrepresentation and suppression, pre-African spirituality has persisted, carrying forward lessons about harmony, morality, and cosmic balance. It reminds us that what is truly sacred cannot be destroyed. It adapts, survives, and continues to illuminate the lives of those who honor it. The legacy of suppression and resilience sets the stage for rediscovery. By understanding the ways in which sacred knowledge was threatened and preserved, we gain deeper insight into its value, meaning, and relevance today. These practices, once hidden, now invite us to explore, honor, and integrate the wisdom of our ancestors into a world that has long misunderstood them. In the modern world, a quiet revolution is taking place. Across Africa and the diaspora, people are reclaiming pre-African spiritual practices once condemned as primitive or dark arts. This resurgence is not simply nostalgia, it is a deliberate effort to reconnect with ancestral wisdom, restore cultural identity, and find guidance in a chaotic, fragmented world. Sacred knowledge, long suppressed, is now being celebrated as a source of empowerment, ethics, and cosmic understanding. Contemporary practitioners study ancient texts, oral histories, and archaeological evidence to reconstruct rituals and symbolic systems. Social media, books, podcasts, and online communities provide platforms for sharing knowledge once confined to secret circles. Young people are learning the meaning behind masks, symbols, and chants, while elders offer mentorship, bridging generations in a process of cultural revival. What was once hidden is now accessible, yet still approached with respect, care, and reverence. The revival extends beyond ceremonial practice. It is a holistic reclaiming of worldview. Pre-African spirituality emphasizes balance, ethical responsibility, and alignment with natural cycles, principles that resonate deeply in today's ecological and social crises. Modern practitioners draw inspiration from these teachings to promote environmental stewardship, social cohesion, and personal development. The ancient wisdom of harmony and cosmic connection becomes a lens through which contemporary challenges can be approached and understood. Music, dance, and visual art are central to this revival. Artists are blending traditional rhythms, ceremonial chants, and symbolic imagery with modern media, creating works that honor ancestral knowledge while speaking to today's audiences. Festivals celebrating African spirituality are increasingly common, showcasing ritual dances, divination practices, and symbolic arts. These events are not only cultural expressions but also living classrooms where knowledge is shared, experienced, and preserved. Diaspora communities continue to play a vital role in the resurgence of sacred practices. In the Americas and Europe, African-descended populations are tracing spiritual lineages, reconstructing ceremonies, and reclaiming ritual knowledge distorted or suppressed over centuries. Practices such as Vodou, Santeria, and Candomblé are being studied in their historical context, revealing connections to ancestral African traditions. This reclamation empowers individuals to honor heritage, assert cultural identity, and participate in spiritual practices previously hidden or misunderstood. Education is emerging as a key component of this revival. Workshops, courses, and documentaries explore the history, philosophy, and ethics of pre-African spirituality. Scholars collaborate with community leaders to ensure that sacred knowledge is accurately represented, responsibly taught, and ethically transmitted. By fostering understanding rather than sensationalizing magic, this approach helps dismantle lingering misconceptions and affirms the intellectual, spiritual, and cultural value of these practices. The digital age has amplified access to sacred knowledge, but it has also introduced challenges. Online platforms can spread misinformation, commodify rituals, or trivialize sacred practices. Responsible reclamation requires discernment, mentorship, and ethical engagement. True revival is rooted in respect for ancestral wisdom, acknowledgement of historical suppression, and the conscious application of teachings in ways that benefit communities and individuals alike. Modern spiritual movements are also integrating pre-African practices into daily life. Meditation, offerings, ancestral reverence, and seasonal rituals are incorporated alongside contemporary lifestyles. Individuals are not just performing ceremonies, they are embracing an ethical framework that informs personal growth, community interaction, and environmental stewardship. This integration underscores the timeless relevance of these practices. They are living systems of knowledge, adaptable yet deeply rooted in sacred principles. The revival of pre-African spirituality also challenges dominant narratives about African history and culture. By reclaiming sacred knowledge, communities confront stereotypes, dismantle misconceptions, and affirm the intellectual and spiritual sophistication of their ancestors. This process is both healing and empowering, providing a sense of continuity, identity, and pride that colonial suppression sought to erase. Ultimately, the modern reclamation of sacred knowledge is more than a revival of rituals. It is a reawakening of values, ethics, and cosmic understanding. The wisdom of the past is now a guide for the present, offering lessons in balance, resilience, and responsibility. By embracing these teachings, individuals and communities reconnect with their roots, honor their ancestors, and forge a path toward a future informed by the depth and richness of pre-African spirituality. The wisdom of pre-African spirituality is not confined to history. It carries profound lessons for our modern world. At its core, these practices emphasize balance, ethical responsibility, and connection, principles that remain vital in an era dominated by technology, materialism, and social fragmentation. By examining how ancient communities lived in alignment with the cosmos, we uncover insights that can guide personal growth, relationships, and society at large. One of the most striking lessons is the emphasis on balance between humans and nature. Pre-African spirituality recognized that humans are not separate from the environment, but part of a larger ecosystem. Rituals and seasonal ceremonies maintained harmony with natural cycles, teaching communities to respect rivers, forests, and wildlife. Today, as climate change and ecological degradation threaten the planet, these teachings remind us that ethical stewardship of nature is both spiritual and practical, and that imbalance carries consequences. Another core principle is responsibility in the use of knowledge and power. Spiritual leaders and initiates were entrusted with wisdom that could heal or harm. They were ethically bound to act for the collective good, not personal gain. In contemporary society, this principle resonates in leadership, science, and technology. Knowledge, when misused, can lead to destruction. When applied responsibly, it fosters growth, healing, and community. Pre-African spirituality offers a model of ethical accountability that transcends time. Community and interconnectedness were central to these ancient practices. Rituals, divination, and healing were not individual pursuits, but communal experiences. Each member contributed to and benefited from collective wisdom. Modern societies, often fragmented and individualistic, can learn from this ethic of mutual responsibility. Prioritizing community well-being, sharing knowledge, and honoring social bonds are timeless lessons embedded in these practices. The spiritual framework of ancestral reverence also carries practical relevance today. Honoring ancestors was not merely ceremonial, it cultivated respect for history, memory, and the continuity of knowledge. This practice fosters humility, grounding, and perspective, reminding individuals that their actions resonate beyond their immediate existence. In a fast-paced, future-oriented world, ancestral wisdom encourages reflection, gratitude, and a sense of purpose. Pre-African spirituality also teaches that knowledge is inseparable from action. Learning about energy, symbols, and rituals without applying it in ethical ways was meaningless. This principle resonates with modern education, self-development, and leadership. Knowledge becomes transformative when paired with conscious, responsible action. A lesson that remains crucial in a world where information is abundant, but wisdom is scarce. The concept of healing as holistic is another enduring insight. Ancient practices treated the body, mind, and spirit as interconnected. Illness, imbalance, or misfortune was addressed through ethical guidance, ritual, and natural remedies, emphasizing that personal well-being is inseparable from spiritual and communal harmony. Today, holistic approaches to health, mental wellness, and lifestyle echo these ancient principles, demonstrating their timeless applicability. Pre-African spirituality also emphasizes adaptation without losing essence. Practices survived colonial suppression and diaspora displacement by evolving, blending with other traditions, and finding new forms. This adaptability teaches resilience in the face of adversity, reminding us that core values can endure even under pressure, and that reinvention does not require abandoning foundational principles. Symbols and rituals as tools for focus and intention offer another practical lesson. Just as masks, carvings, and dances encoded energy, ethics, and cosmic principles, modern practices like meditation, journaling, or intentional art can serve similar purposes. These tools provide structure, meaning, and a tangible connection to abstract principles, helping individuals navigate complex emotional and social landscapes. Finally, pre-African spirituality teaches that spiritual knowledge is a shared responsibility. Wisdom is preserved, transmitted, and applied collectively, not hoarded. In today's globalized world, this principle encourages cultural appreciation, ethical sharing of knowledge, and collaborative solutions to societal challenges. It reminds us that survival and progress depend on mutual care, reverence, and stewardship of shared resources, both material and spiritual. By internalizing these lessons, modern individuals and communities can cultivate ethics, balance, resilience, and connection. Pre-African spirituality offers not only historical insight, but also practical guidance for living harmoniously with ourselves, our communities, and the natural world. Its teachings remind us that knowledge, when tempered with responsibility and reverence, becomes a tool for transformation rather than destruction. These ancient insights challenge us to rethink modern assumptions about progress, power, and morality. They invite us to embrace a worldview in which every action resonates beyond the self, where wisdom is intertwined with ethics, and where harmony is not optional but essential. In this sense, pre-African spirituality is not just history, it is a living guide, a timeless blueprint for a world seeking balance, meaning, and justice. By studying, reclaiming, and applying these teachings, we honor our ancestors and empower ourselves. The wisdom of pre-African spirituality is a bridge between past and present, offering tools for ethical living, spiritual resilience, and communal harmony. Its relevance is undeniable, its depth profound, and its guidance indispensable for anyone seeking to navigate the complexities of the modern world with insight and integrity. The echoes of pre-African spirituality reverberate through time, whispering secrets of balance, power, and cosmic connection. What was once hidden, misunderstood, or feared is now being unveiled with clarity, respect, and reverence. From the intricate rituals of the past to the modern revival, sacred knowledge has endured, shaping communities, guiding decisions, and offering insights that remain profoundly relevant today. As we reflect on this journey, it becomes clear that these practices are not relics. They are living systems of wisdom, carefully preserved and adapted to meet the needs of each generation. The lessons of harmony with nature, ethical responsibility, ancestral reverence, and communal interconnectedness are as urgent now as they were centuries ago. They remind us that true power is measured not in domination, but in balance, understanding, and service. Modern seekers are reclaiming what was almost lost: rituals, chants, symbols, and ethical teachings that illuminate a path to self-awareness, societal harmony, and spiritual resilience. This resurgence bridges the past and present, showing that ancient wisdom can guide us through modern challenges. By embracing these principles, we honor the sacrifices of those who came before us while forging a future grounded in awareness, respect, and responsibility. The journey of rediscovery is more than cultural preservation. It is a call to action. Each of us is invited to reflect on our relationship with knowledge, power, community, and nature. Are we aligned with the principles of balance, ethics, and cosmic connection? Are we willing to integrate the lessons of our ancestors into daily life, not just as observers, but as active participants in their ongoing story? In this unfolding narrative, every action carries weight, every choice resonates beyond the individual, and every insight offers the potential for transformation. The wisdom of pre-African spirituality challenges us to see beyond superficial understanding, to engage deeply with the forces that shape our lives, and to embrace a worldview that values ethics over ego, connection over isolation, and harmony over chaos. The revival of these sacred practices is a testament to human resilience, creativity, and reverence for the unseen. It reminds us that knowledge is not just for accumulation. It is for application, for healing, and for guiding both personal and collective journeys. As modern custodians of this wisdom, we are tasked with preserving its integrity, practicing it responsibly, and sharing it thoughtfully. Ultimately, pre-African spirituality is not merely a study of the past. It is a blueprint for living with intention, an invitation to harmonize with the world, honor our ancestors, and navigate life with awareness, ethics, and courage. Its teachings transcend time, offering clarity amidst complexity and hope amidst uncertainty. So as this exploration draws to a close, take with you the essence of what has been revealed: the power of balance, the necessity of ethical responsibility, the importance of community, and the enduring guidance of ancestral wisdom. Let it inform your choices, inspire your actions, and deepen your connection to both the seen and unseen forces that shape your world. If you feel this journey into the sacred origins of pre-African spirituality has expanded your understanding, enriched your perspective, or awakened curiosity, remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Sharing this knowledge ensures that the echoes of our ancestors continue to guide, inspire, and transform lives today and for generations to come.